after the Taliban took Kabul from Afghan forces, which of course signaled the end of the American experiment in imperialism in Asia, corporate media figures, both from the right and the lesser right wing, tore into President Joe Biden for going through with the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan. So first, I'm going to show you what's going on CNN and MSNBC, so-called liberal media. Let's take a look. What are they saying?
President Biden is intent on avoiding a Saigon moment. That's a reference, of course, to the hasty and humiliating U.S. evacuation from Vietnam. Aren't we already in the midst of a Saigon moment?
Isn't that exactly what we're seeing now? I mean, even the images are evocative of what happened in Vietnam.
If Afghanistan returns to being a safe haven for Islamists, what have we spent 20 years doing there? This is the Saigon moment for President Biden, and that this will be a legacy, an albatross around his neck for the rest of time.
It's looking very much like the Taliban will be back in power on the 20th anniversary of 9/11.
Wow, let that sink in.
Why not go back in?
All right, so already, that's just from earlier this morning and during the weekend, a Saigon moment. Oh, embarrassing for Biden. Oh, albatross around his neck for the end to the end of time. Why not go back in, says Mika Brzezinski. This is the discussion going on liberal media, so-called liberal media. Now, to be fair, of course, because I'm always fair, I'm the most fair person in America. Biden made some predictions that were way off and said some things that were a little cringe. But I think there's a reason for that. But yet, and I'm going to explain that later, but somehow, for some reason, the politicians and all the media figures in Washington are somehow shocked that the Taliban swept in so quickly. Why is that? It's the corporate media bubble. All right, everybody in the establishment media thinks that Afghanistan, what we did, all the training, all the money that we put into Afghan troops, was going to be a rousing success. Okay? They don't understand what went wrong and that we need to go back. Well, here's the thing. Joe Biden actually didn't go wrong on the policy position. On leaving Afghanistan, continuing the policy that actually Donald Trump had initiated, which I also think Donald Trump was right about. Leaving the country and not doing a military occupation, it's the right way to go. And I give them credit for that. But in the Washington groupthink, in the bubble, they really believed that Afghan forces trained by the United States and armed by the United States would hold back the Taliban. I mean, we spent $1 trillion arming and training them. They outnumbered the Taliban by 4 times the Afghan army did. So what happened? Why didn't they? Well, there's a couple of different reasons. For one, there was no loyalty to the government. Again, this corrupt, propped up puppet government that we put into place, the Afghan army wasn't loyal to. And so as soon as we removed our support for that, of course it fell apart. They were riddled, the whole government was riddled with corruption. And so Afghan forces, they chose not to fight. And I think the reason that they had signed up is because steady paycheck, food, and that's it, stability. With the Taliban coming, look, a lot of people that had served in the Afghan forces had actually switched sides when given a choice by the Taliban. They were not loyal to that government. They just weren't. And so they chose not to fight, which really actually does go to bolster the argument against being there. Because when something falls so fast, when the U.S. decides to stop propping it up after trillions of dollars in spending, well, then it was never going to be able to stand on its own. If there's any fault to lay at Biden's feet, it's that he's too plugged in to Washington groupthink. And that's what it is. Look, and that said, by the way, the polls, look, you won't see it on corporate media, but the American people largely back Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. We are tired of the forever wars. But you're not going to see that. As I said, all these cable pundits, their hair is on fire. Like, oh my God, how could Biden fail so badly? Oh my God, we need to go back in. Why can't we go back in? No, the American people are not in favor of going back in. Again, I think I can speak for a lot of people when we say that our hearts go out to, Afghanis, the people who don't want to live under the Taliban. That's why I'm saying we should open up immigration. We should allow these people to come over to America to become refugees and welcome them in with open arms, especially the people who helped us for the last 20 years. There's no reason we should have been letting them twist in the wind like that. Okay? But as I said, while our hearts break, and a lot of people have a lot of empathy and are like, we're heartbroken by what's going on right now, and that the Taliban has taken over because they are a hard right, fundamentalist religious group. They're going to oppress people, oppress women. I mean, there's already stories coming out where women sent home from universities, they can't go to work. There's a lot of people that are really afraid for their future now. And again, it breaks my heart. But at the same time, we cannot be there, right? We cannot force them to be in a government that is not theirs, that is not of their own creation. It's just not going to work. And yet, of course, that is what the military media industrial complex is calling for. And then again, I just showed you the liberal reaction. Let's go now to Republicans, which of course are going to be worse.
I think weak American leadership always harms American security. So this is in the context of a Biden administration that has basically abandoned the global stage in favor of climate change. Right? They've been focused on critical race theory while the embassy is at risk.
It is the most shameful thing I have seen in my entire career in Washington. And you know what? It is shameful that Joe Biden hasn't spoken to the American people for 6 days while this plays out. But what could he say? How can you defend the indefensible? This is either Joe Biden completely miscalculated, in which case he's incompetent, or he knew that this would be the result and didn't care, in which case he's a horrible human being. In either case, the American people deserve better from their commander-in-chief. It's just the most shocking thing I've witnessed in my career in Washington.
All right, but there's more. We also have Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Here's what he said, quote, "The Biden administration's botched export from Afghanistan, including the frantic evacuation of Americans and vulnerable Afghans from Kabul, is a shameful failure of American leadership. Everyone saw this coming except the president, who publicly and confidently dismissed these threats just a few weeks ago." So, look, this response, 100% expected. Corporate media, especially right-wing conservative media, but also, again, MSNBC, CNN, they love to cheer on war. They cheered on Iraq. They cheered on our invasion of Afghanistan. And now, of course, that you're seeing that the attempt to extricate ourselves from this no-win scenario is not going over well with the same military-industrial media complex that cheered us into the war to begin with. And look, just like we saw with Mika Brzezinski, McConnell is going to call for more war. In the statement bashing Biden, here's what McConnell said. "It did not happen this way. The United States had the capacity to avoid this disaster. We still have the capacity to dampen its effects, but without a presence on the ground or local partners, defending the homeland from a resurgent Al-Qaeda will be far more difficult." Oh, it's Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda. They're coming back. They're going to come back. They're going to attack us. The Al-Qaeda's coming. We better get back into Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda. Here we go again. Calling for more troops on the ground, or Al-Qaeda's coming for us. 9/11. 9/11. Here we go. Here's Leader McCarthy, Kevin McCarthy. Quote, "Joe Biden has been a commander-in-chief for 7 months. The current failure in Afghanistan falls squarely on his shoulders." Even though it was Trump that actually did the pull-up. But I agreed with both of them, and I still agree. His lack of leadership during this pivotal moment has been shameful. It has only served to embolden our adversaries and let down our allies. by the way, while Republicans are criticizing Joe Biden for pulling out of Afghanistan, they have already scrubbed their website of Trump bragging about pulling out of Afghanistan. Yeah, of course. Of course. Here's Representative Liz Cheney. By the way, daughter of Dick Cheney. Ugh. Saying this: we've now created a situation where as we get to the 20th anniversary of 9/11, here we go, we are surrendering Afghanistan to the terrorist organization that housed Al-Qaeda when they plotted and planned attacks against us. Trump also said that Biden had, quote, surrendered to the Taliban, even though Trump had tried to reach out and have peace talks with the Taliban in secret. Lindsey Graham, of course, said this: the long-term consequences for America flowing from this debacle in Afghanistan are enormous. America will be seen as weak in the eyes of our enemies and unreliable in the eyes of our allies. So there you go. More fear-mongering. Big surprise from Republicans and, of course, corporate media. Let me just say, in my opinion, the Biden administration's missteps on this, mainly about, again, corporate media bubble, not understanding that the Afghans had literally no loyalty for the government they were supposed to be fighting for, and you can't have a military force. Like, it's a military force with no... Okay, how do I put this? So, look, you all know nationalism. I think we all have some sort of sense of nationalism, or national identity, I should say. Because nationalism generally gets, used with the right wing, and of course, but like a sense of national identity, right? So a lot of these people that are fighting on the Afghan side didn't really consider themselves to have a national Afghani identity. It's more of like a local or regional kind of thing. And so they weren't really fighting for, they didn't have the will to fight for that national identity that just didn't exist. And that's why they gave up, and that's why they didn't do it. But anyway, again, our failures to understand the very people on the ground were systemic throughout the entire time. Oh, they'll greet us as liberators. Remember that. Don't worry. We'll take this entire country and we'll unify it under our chosen representative for them. No, not going to work. It's a disaster every time it's tried. But again, steps from the Biden administration, notwithstanding, in not taking, of course, our allies with, or planning this out a little bit better. That said, when corporate media and Republicans are against you, at least on foreign policy, more likely, very likely, that you're actually doing the right thing. And that's rare. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.